In the bustling heart of Yaoundé, Cameroon's proud capital, Chief Nember stood as a monument to success. At 45, he commanded respect wherever his shadow fell. From humble beginnings as a roadside food vendor, he had built an empire, hotels stretching across the nation, transport lines connecting cities, estates rising like monuments to his determination. People whispered his name with reverence. Politicians sought his counsel. Business rivals feared his sharp mind. Yet despite his power, Ndemba remained a quiet man, preferring the weight of silence to the noise of celebration. He didn't throw lavish parties or parade his wealth. This restraint made him even more formidable in the eyes of those who knew him. His compound in Yaoundé reflected his success: marble floors, glass walls, bold gates guarded by armed security, CCTV cameras watching every corner. Animal carvings adorned the halls, imported furniture filled every room, and curtains kissed the polished floors. It was a mansion befitting a king. But every king needs a queen, and at 26, Ewaine became his. She arrived from a coastal town, her beauty so striking it seemed to stop time itself. Her skin glowed like smooth chocolate, her smile carried secrets, and when she spoke, even the wind paused to listen. The wedding was the talk of Yaoundé: traditional drums, flowing wine, dancing that lasted until dawn. Yet questions lingered in people's minds. Why had such a young beauty chosen a man nearly 20 years her senior? Was it love that drew her, or the intoxicating scent of power and wealth? Ewaine kept her heart locked away, her true feelings hidden behind smiles and soft words. She followed her husband dutifully, supported him in public, managed their home with grace. On the surface, they appeared perfect, the powerful chief and his beautiful wife, a couple other families envied. But as the elders say, what the eye see is not always what truly exists. Behind closed doors, in the spaces between their words, something else was growing. Something dark. Something patient. Ndemba had conquered business and politics, but he had yet to learn the hardest lesson of all, that the greatest betrayals come not from enemies in the marketplace, but from those who share your bed and break bread at your table. The change came gradually, like night creeping across the sky. Ndemba began waking with splitting headaches that no amount of rest could cure. At first, he dismissed it as stress, the burden of managing multiple businesses, navigating political waters, and constant travel would exhaust any man. But this was different. His appetite vanished. Food that once brought him pleasure now tasted like ash. Sleep became a stranger, leaving him to stare at the ceiling through endless nights. His strong frame, built through years of hard work and discipline, began to shrink. Clothes hung looser on his shoulders. For weeks, he told no one, not even Ewaine. Pride kept his lips sealed. Chiefs didn't complain. Lions didn't whimper. But his body was betraying him, growing weaker with each passing day. Then came the moment that shattered his silence. During a foundation event, standing before hundreds of supporters and donors, Ndemba collapsed. One moment he was mid-sentence, speaking about community development, the next, the floor rushed up to meet him. Screams erupted. Security rushed forward. Chaos consumed the hall. He was rushed to Yaoundé's finest hospital, where doctors in white coats swarmed around him like concerned bees. They ran every test imaginable: blood work, scans, x-rays, injections. Machines beeped and hummed. Nurses whispered in corners. Days passed in a blur of medical jargon and worried faces. But the results made no sense. "Sir, your body appears perfectly healthy," one doctor said, confusion creasing his brow. "All your vitals are normal. We can find nothing wrong." Yet Nember knew with absolute certainty that something was very wrong indeed. When he returned home to recover, he noticed something strange. Ewaine hadn't seemed shocked by his collapse. While others panicked, she had remained calm, almost prepared. Her face showed concern, yes, but her eyes told a different story. His businesses suffered without his direct oversight. Meetings were cancelled. Deals fell through. The Lion of Yaoundé was confined to his bed, and the city noticed. But what troubled him most wasn't the lost revenue or missed opportunities, it was the growing sense that his weakness wasn't accidental. One night, around 2 in the morning, Ndemba woke with his throat burning for water. He tried to call out, but his voice came as barely a whisper. That's when he heard it, voices drifting through the darkness. Ewaine's voice, soft and secretive. And a man's voice responding, low and serious. His heart hammered against his ribs. He tried to sit up, but his body felt like wood, heavy, immovable, useless. He closed his eyes and lay perfectly still, pretending to sleep, straining to hear. The voices faded like smoke. By morning, he questioned whether he'd dreamed it. Who were you speaking to last night? He asked gently over breakfast. Ewaine's smile was calm as still water. Or, it was just the gateman. The power went out, and he wanted to know about the generator. Ndemba nodded slowly, but inside, his spirit trembled. He had built empires with his mind, crushed competitors with his strategy, navigated political minefields with his wit. But now, weak as a leaf in the wind, he was beginning to understand a terrible truth: his greatest enemy might be sleeping beside him. In that great mansion of marble and secrets, only one person truly cared for Chief Nember with a pure heart: Connor, the old housemaid. She had served him since the beginning, back when he lived in a small house in Essos with dreams bigger than his bank account. Connor had watched him rise from nothing to everything, and her loyalty ran deeper than blood. She had known him before the fame, before the fleet of cars, before men called him chief. She remembered the young man who would share his food with street children, who paid his workers fairly, who built his empire on honesty as much as ambition. To Connor, he wasn't just an employer, he was family. As Nember grew weaker, Connor's worry grew stronger. She noticed things others missed. The way Ewaine's face remained unmoved when the chief struggled to walk. How certain foods disappeared from the kitchen only to reappear prepared by Ewaine's own hands. The late-night visitors who came through the back gate when everyone was supposed to be sleeping. One afternoon, when Ewaine had gone to town, Connor gathered her courage and crept into Nember's room. She closed the door softly behind her and approached his bed, her old hands trembling. "Chief," she whispered, "forgive me for speaking, but I hear things. I see things. Madam, she is not who you think she is." Ndemba's eyes snapped open wide. "What are you saying, Connor?" The old woman's voice cracked with emotion. "She has visitors, sir. At night, a man comes through the back gate. She meets him near the kitchen. They speak in low tones, heads close together. I fear they are planning something terrible. Why didn't you tell me before?" Ndemba's hands shook. "Because I am afraid, sir. I am just a servant. Who would believe me against madam? But I could not hold it anymore. I know something is wrong with your health, and I fear." She paused, tears filling her ancient eyes. "I fear it is not natural." Ndemba reached out and squeezed her weathered hand. "Thank you, Connor. You are more than a servant. You are my eyes when I cannot see. But please, be careful. Say nothing to anyone else. Not yet." That night, Connor went to bed with a lighter heart, believing she had done the right thing. She had warned the chief. Now he could protect himself. She fell asleep planning to help him investigate further, to gather proof of Ewaine's betrayal. But Connor would never wake to see another sunrise in that house. By morning, her room stood empty. Her bags were gone. Her few possessions vanished. Her phone was switched off, its signal dead to the world. No goodbye letter. No explanation. No trace. When Ndemba asked about her, Ewaine shrugged with casual indifference. "I think she mentioned wanting to visit her village. She said something about family matters." But Ndemba knew. Connor hadn't left voluntarily. The loyal servant who had watched over him for decades, who had risked everything to warn him, had been silenced. And if they could make Connor disappear without a trace, what chance did he have? From that day forward, trust became a luxury Ndemba could no longer afford. He was trapped in his own mansion, surrounded by marble and gold, with his greatest enemy wearing a wedding ring and sleeping in his bed. The walls that once protected him had become his prison. Desperation drove Ndemba to seek help beyond the modern hospitals that had failed him. If science couldn't explain his deteriorating condition, perhaps the old ways could. In secret, he sent word to the village for a traditional healer, a man who could see what doctors' machines could not. The healer arrived under cover of darkness, an ancient man whose face was a map of deep wrinkles and wisdom. He wore amulets around his neck and carried a leather bag filled with herbs, bones, and mysterious implements. His eyes, though clouded with age, seemed to see everything, past, present, and the shadows of what was to come. He circled Nember's bed slowly, chanting in a tongue older than the city itself. He threw bones onto the floor and studied how they fell. He burned herbs that filled the room with pungent smoke. He pressed his ear against Nember's chest, listening not just to his heartbeat but to something deeper, the rhythm of his spirit. Finally, the old man stepped back, his expression grave. "Your sickness is not from nature, Chief. It is sent." "What do you mean?" Ndemba asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Someone close to you, someone who shares your roof, your food, your bed, is feeding you death. Slowly. Patiently. The hand that should protect you is the hand that destroys you." The words hit Ndemba like physical blows. To hear his suspicions confirmed by someone who understood the spiritual realm made it terrifyingly real. "You must act fast, Chief," the healer continued, his voice urgent. "Or you will leave this world quietly, and no one will know your true story. The poison in your body is working. I can see your spirit growing dim." But when Ndemba tried to sit up, to plan, to fight back, his body refused. His legs wouldn't support him. His arms shook with the effort of lifting a cup. He couldn't even walk to the door without assistance. How could a man so weak fight against such calculated evil? He looked at Ewaine differently now. Every meal she brought, every smile she offered, every tender word, all of it poisoned with deception. He remembered their wedding day, how she had looked into his eyes and promised to love him forever. Had it all been a performance? Had she ever loved him, or had she been planning this from the beginning? At night, he tried to write a will. His shaking hands gripped the pen as he attempted to ensure his wealth would go to his family, his businesses to trusted associates, his legacy protected. But after just a few lines, his hand would fail. The pen would fall. The paper remained incomplete, day after day. "If anything happens to me," he told Ewaine one evening, his voice barely stronger than a whisper, "make sure my people bury me in the family land. Promise me that." She smiled softly, touching his face with gentle fingers. "You will live, my husband. You are strong. You've overcome so much. This is just temporary." But in her smile, Ndemba saw what he had been blind to before, the absence. No warmth lived in those eyes. No genuine concern softened that face. It was the smile of someone waiting for a promised inheritance, not the expression of a wife fearing her husband's death. Ndemba closed his eyes against the truth that was crushing him. He had been a warrior in business, a lion in politics, a builder of empires. He had faced down competitors, navigated corruption, survived economic storms. But now, lying in his soft bed in his grand house, he felt more helpless than a child. His time was running out, and he knew it. What he didn't know was that his burial had already been planned, not by his family, not by his people, but by the woman who had sworn to honor him until death parted them. The only question was whether death would come before he could expose the truth. After Connor vanished, the mansion changed. The very air grew heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Staff members walked with heads down, speaking in whispers. The gardener walked faster than necessary, eager to finish and leave. Even the security guards seemed nervous, constantly looking over their shoulders at shadows that shouldn't be there. It was during one of his midnight patrols that Evo, the night guard, witnessed something that would haunt him forever. Moving from the front gate toward the servants' quarters, he heard the soft click of the back gate opening. He froze, hand moving instinctively toward his flashlight. A figure slipped through, tall, slim, dressed entirely in black. Evo's training told him to shout, to raise the alarm, but something made him hesitate. The man gave a secret signal with his hand, a gesture that spoke of familiarity and arrangement. Then came the true shock. Madame Ewaine emerged from the back of the house, a scarf covering her head. She didn't look surprised. She didn't call for security. She walked straight to the man as if she'd been expecting him, as if this was routine. Evo ducked behind the water tank, his heart pounding so loudly he feared they'd hear it. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and began recording. This was the proof Chief Nember needed. This would expose everything. But before he could capture more than a few seconds, something struck him from behind. The world exploded in stars and pain, then darkness swallowed him whole. He woke the next morning in the storage room, his head throbbing, blood dried on his neck. His phone was gone. When he stumbled out and asked the other guards what happened, they looked at him strangely. We didn't see anything. You must have fainted. Maybe you've been working too many night shifts. But Evo knew what he'd seen. He also knew that speaking about it would likely get him killed or disappeared, like Connor. Inside the house, Ndemba's condition worsened by the hour. He was moved to a ground-floor bedroom because climbing stairs had become impossible. His face had thinned to the point where his cheekbones protruded sharply. His eyes, once bright with intelligence and authority, now held only pain and knowledge of betrayal. One morning, he tried to open the drawer beside his bed where he kept his rosary and his mother's photograph. It was locked. Strange, it had never been locked before. All his personal items, suddenly inaccessible. Why is my drawer locked? He asked Ewaine weakly. She smiled that practiced smile. Or, the carpenter came to fix something. Maybe he locked it by mistake. I'll get the key later. But the key never came, and Ndemba knew she was lying. That afternoon, hungry and weak, he asked the cook, Auntie Nanga, for some porridge. Later, he overheard Ewaine telling her, don't cook for the chief anymore. I will prepare all his meals myself. I want to make sure he gets exactly what he needs. Terror gripped Ndemba's heart. He began hiding the food she brought him, tucking it under his pillow when she wasn't looking. That night, rats came for the hidden food. By morning, two lay dead beside his bed, foam crusted around their tiny mouths. The proof was there, undeniable and horrible. His wife was slowly poisoning him, and he was too weak to escape, too isolated to call for help. His phones had mysteriously disappeared. The staff had been warned or frightened into silence. He was a prisoner in his own palace. At night, he had vivid dreams. His late mother appeared, standing by a river in a dead forest under a red sky. Ndemba, my son, you are in danger. Wake up. The woman you love is digging your grave. He tried to speak but had no voice. He watched as his mansion appeared in the dream, black smoke rising from the roof, forming into Ewaine's face, smiling. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat, and looked at the woman beside him, her back turned. Ewaine, he whispered into the darkness, why are you doing this to me? She didn't answer. Perhaps she was asleep. Or perhaps she was awake, listening, waiting for the poison to finish its work. News travels in mysterious ways in Africa. Even when mouths are silenced, the wind carries whispers. Even when doors are locked, truth finds cracks to slip through. And so it was that word of Chief Nember's strange condition began to reach the village, his ancestral home, where the elders remembered him as a boy and the land held the bones of his fathers. Bola, Ndemba's cousin, was a spiritual man who lived close to the ancestors. One night, he woke suddenly from sleep, his body covered in sweat, his heart racing. He had dreamed of Ndemba drowning in black water, calling for help while a beautiful woman stood on the shore, watching without moving. Something is wrong, Bola told his wife. I must go to Yaoundé. My brother needs me. When Bola arrived at the mansion, he felt it immediately, a darkness hanging over the place like storm clouds. The guards let him in reluctantly, as if they'd been instructed to discourage visitors. Inside, the house felt cold despite the tropical heat. The moment he saw Ndemba, shock seized him. What has happened to you? You look like you've been drained of life itself. Ndemba tried to speak, but Ewaine was there, always there, her smile in place. The chief has been ill. The doctors say he needs rest. No stress, no excitement. Bola didn't believe her. He wanted to take Ndemba to the village, to the traditional healers who could cleanse him. But Ewaine refused firmly. He's not fit to travel. Moving him could be dangerous. That night, Bola stayed in the guest room, troubled and unable to sleep. Around 2 in the morning, he heard something, drums, low and distant, but unmistakable. He stepped outside and saw the back door standing open. Wind carried voices to his ears, chanting words that made his blood freeze. Ndemba no Jana, return no more. Bola ran back inside, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night praying. By morning, he was gone. When Ewaine told Ndemba that his cousin had left early for urgent business in Douala, Ndemba knew it was a lie. Bola would never leave without saying goodbye. And indeed, no one saw Bola again after that night. But before disappearing, Bola had done something crucial. He had written a letter to Chief Ndemba, the head elder in the village, describing what he'd seen and felt. Something evil is happening in that house, he wrote. Our brother is in danger. The ancestors are disturbed. We must act. Meanwhile, a young maid named Elsie, who genuinely cared for the chief, was cleaning one day when she knocked over a flower vase in the hallway. Inside, hidden deep in the base, was a folded paper. With trembling hands, she opened it and read words that would change everything. If you find this, know that I am not safe. My wife is not what she seems. She plans to bury me in secret. Tell my people. Ndemba. Elsie heard footsteps approaching fast. She shoved the note into her pocket and continued cleaning, her heart hammering. That evening, she left the house as usual, but she never returned. Before disappearing into safety, she gave the note to Chief Ndemba. The elder read it 3 times, his weathered hands shaking. He called a meeting immediately. Under the ancient Iroko tree in the village square, men and women gathered. The note was read aloud. Arguments erupted. Some wanted to go to Yaoundé immediately. Others counseled patience and investigation. But they all agreed on one thing: a chief could not be allowed to suffer alone. If he was sick, the village must know. If he was in danger, the village must act. If he had died, the village must bury him with honor, according to the traditions of their ancestors. We will go to Yaoundé, Chief Ndemba declared. We will bring our son home, whether he walks with us or whether we carry him. The land has spoken. The ancestors demand it. Back in the mansion, Ndemba's condition had deteriorated to the point of no return. He could no longer lift his head. His voice was barely a whisper. Ewaine and 2 unfamiliar nurses were the only ones allowed near him now. Sometimes, through half-closed eyes, he saw them crushing pills and stirring his drinks. Other times, he heard them whispering, "The burial ground is ready. All we need is the silence." He tried to scream. He tried to fight. He tried to crawl. But his body was no longer his own. It was a prison from which his spirit desperately wanted to escape. The rain fell heavy on the night Ndemba took his final breath. Ewaine sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall with increasing difficulty. She touched his face one last time and said words that would echo in the spiritual realm: "You had it all, but you never gave me what I wanted most, freedom." A single tear rolled down Ndemba's cheek. His eyes closed. His breath stopped. And the lion of Yaoundé was gone. But unlike Ewaine's plans, his story was not finished. Far away in the village, drums began to beat without human hands touching them. The elders woke simultaneously from the same dream. And Chief Ndemba knew with absolute certainty, it was time to act. Chief Nember was dead, but the city of Yaoundé had nothing. No wailing. No drums. No gunshots fired to announce a chief's passing. No fires lit to guide his spirit home. There was only silence, deep, unnatural silence that violated every tradition his people held sacred. Ewaine stood by the window as dawn broke, taking a deep breath of freedom. "It is finished," she whispered to herself. "Now I can begin my life." No tears fell from her eyes. No grief bent her shoulders. She simply pulled out her phone and made a call, not to Ndemba's family, not to any doctor, but to Tambo, the man from the shadows. "It is done," she said simply. "Good," came his low reply. "I'm on my way." we bury tonight. In African tradition, when a chief dies, the entire village must know. There should be crying that shakes the earth, drums that wake the ancestors, preparations that involve hundreds of hands. But for Ndemba, there was nothing. Ewaine refused to let anyone enter the house. She told the remaining staff the house needed fumigation and sent them all home. The gates were locked. The cameras were turned off. The mansion became a tomb. She wrapped Ndemba's body, still warm, in a blue royal cloth. She sprayed his face with perfume to mask any smell. No coffin. No prayers. No goodbye. Just a body in a bag, treated with less dignity than the poorest beggar in the street. That night, under a quietly weeping sky, Tambo arrived with two silent men, strong and loyal, bound to him by debts and dark promises. They carried shovels and began digging behind the estate, near the mango trees. Deep and wide they dug, the earth opening like a wound. Ndemba was lowered into that hole, a man who had built hotels and employed thousands, reduced to a secret buried in his own backyard. The earth didn't cry, but the trees seemed to. The wind howled through branches. Leaves shook violently though the air was still. Even the dogs in the neighborhood barked as if sensing something fundamentally wrong. When the body was covered, Tambo poured libation, not to honor the dead, but to seal the silence. He whispered in a language Ewaine didn't understand, binding the earth to keep its secret. Then he looked at her with eyes that held no warmth and said, "No one will know unless the earth speaks." The next morning, when Ndemba's personal assistant, Mr. Luma, called to check on the chief, Ewaine's voice was cheerful. "Oh, the chief is fine. He traveled last night to the village for some rest and spiritual renewal." "That's strange," Luma replied, confused. "He didn't mention anything about traveling to me. When will he be back?" "He said he needs complete quiet. No calls, no disturbances. He wants to reconnect with his roots." Luma hung up, troubled but unsure. Ewaine smiled and began answering messages on Ndemba's phone, pretending to be him. She even posted an old photograph online with a caption, "Spending time with nature in the village. No calls, please. Seeking peace and clarity." Comments flooded in, "Enjoy your rest, Chief. Take all the time you need. We'll hold down the fort." Everyone believed it. Everyone except the ancestors. That night, Ewaine discovered she could no longer sleep. The bedroom felt oppressively heavy, as if the air itself had turned solid. She heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging, deliberate. She rushed out, but no one was there. Just empty hallways and shadows that seemed darker than they should be. Lights began flickering without electrical problems. A mirror in the bathroom cracked down the middle for no reason. The mango tree where Ndemba lay buried lost all its leaves overnight, standing naked and accusing against the sky. "It's just your mind," Tambo told her when she called in panic. "Don't be weak. You did what had to be done. Many women would have done the same in your position." But she felt it, Ndemba was not resting. His spirit was disturbed, trapped, angry. And spirits don't stay buried when they have stories to tell. 3 weeks passed. Ewaine grew thinner. She stopped looking in mirrors. She started hearing whispers in empty rooms. And in the village, preparations were being made. Chief Ndemba had gathered the elders, shown them the note, shared Bola's letter. A convoy was being organized, cars filled with drummers, herbalists, and determined people who would not let their son remain missing. The earth was about to speak. The secret was about to end. Justice, patient and inevitable, was coming down the road from the village. The convoy rode into Yaoundé like a storm of justice. 5 cars carrying drummers whose instruments spoke the language of ancestors, herbalists who could see what eyes could not, and elders wrapped in red and white cloth that signified serious business. They carried staffs that had witnessed decades of village justice. They carried fire in clay pots to light the way for truth. When they reached the mansion's gates, there was no polite knocking. The drums began to beat, deep, resonant, impossible to ignore. "We want to see Chief Nember," they cried as one voice. "Bring out our son. Bring out our brother." Neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Security guards didn't know whether to stop the elders or let them through. How do you stop a force of nature? How do you deny entry to ancestors demanding justice? Ewaine appeared on the top balcony, dressed in white, her hair undone, her eyes sunken from sleepless nights. She looked down at the gathered crowd, and for a moment, the drums went silent. Every eye turned upward to the woman who had become both widow and suspect. Where is our chief? Chief Ndemba's voice rang out, clear and commanding. Ewaine's voice, when it came, was soft and broken. He is gone. Gone where? Demanded another elder. Gone, she repeated, then added in barely a whisper, I buried him. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. An old woman at the back, someone who had known Ndemba since he was a boy, let out a wail that seemed to tear the sky. You buried our lion like a dog. You buried a chief in secret. The crowd surged forward, anger rising like flood water. Chief Ndemba raised his staff for silence. Show us where. Ewaine, defeated and exhausted, led them around to the back of the estate. The drums had stopped, but something heavier than sound filled the air, the weight of violated tradition, of disrespected death, of truth finally emerging from darkness. They stood before the mango tree, its branches bare despite the growing season. The soil beneath was darker than the surrounding earth, recently turned, unnaturally settled. Here, Ewaine said, and the words seemed to cost her everything. The men stepped forward with shovels. Chief Ndemba spoke the traditional words, we must do this with respect. This man was a chief, a voice, a lion in this land. Whatever has been done to him, we will restore his dignity. They began to dig. The sound of metal cutting earth was the only noise, that and the quiet sobbing of women who remembered Ndemba's kindness, his generosity, his strength. Shovel after shovel, deeper and deeper. Then, thump. A soft sound. Then cloth. Then the unmistakable smell of death improperly honored. They uncovered him, wrapped in royal blue cloth, face turned sideways, a gold ring still on his finger. He had been a man of power and wealth, buried like trash in his own backyard. An elder dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered face. This is not how a chief should rest. This is not how we honor those who built our futures. The women's wailing intensified. What have we done to deserve this? A whole lion buried like a goat. Where were we when this evil happened? Ewaine stood apart, silent and still, her eyes fixed on the body of the man she had called husband. A man she had married with vows and smiles. A man she had killed with patience and poison. Chief Ndemba turned to face her, his expression not of hatred but of deep sorrow. You said you buried him with love. But where is the honor? Where are the drums? Where is the mourning cloth? Where is the voice of the ancestors? This is not love. This is shame. Ewaine looked down at her feet. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. No, the elder's voice was firm but not cruel. You planned it. You hid it. You thought you could escape justice. But you forgot one thing, the dead speak. They speak through the earth, through dreams, through the hearts of those who love them. And now, Ndemba's voice is louder than it ever was in life. As evening fell, a traditional council convened inside the compound. A fire was built at the center. Elders sat in a circle, their faces illuminated by flickering flames. Ewaine was brought to kneel in the middle, surrounded by witnesses to her actions and her shame. Chief Ndemba held up the note that Ndemba had hidden, the note that Elsie had found and preserved. He read it aloud, every word a testament to a man who knew he was dying and feared being forgotten. Every sentence revealed a husband's growing fear of his wife, a chief's helplessness in his own home. We will ask only once, Chief Ndemba said, his voice carrying the weight of generations. Speak the truth before this fire, before these witnesses, before the ancestors who are listening. Or may the earth never remember your name. And finally, after weeks of lies and performance, Ewaine began to speak the truth. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks into the dark sky. Ewaine knelt in the center of the circle, her white dress now stained with soil from kneeling. Around her, The faces of elders reflected both the firelight and the gravity of what was unfolding. This was not merely a trial, it was a reckoning. Speak, Chief Nsam commanded. Tell us what happened to our son. Ewaine's voice came out cracked and small, so different from the confident woman who had once walked these halls as mistress of the mansion. Yes. I buried him in secret. Why? The question hung in the air like smoke. She looked around at the faces, some angry, some sad, all waiting. Because I was tired. I was forgotten. I was alone in this big house with a man who only loved his business, his politics, his past. I was his wife, but I felt like another possession he had acquired. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. An elder woman spoke up. Many women are lonely in their marriages. They do not kill their husbands. I met someone, Ewaine continued, her voice barely audible. Tambo. He showed me attention. He made me feel seen. He told me I deserved more than being a chief's decoration. And he said I could have a better life if Nemba was no more. The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock and anger. So you poisoned him, Chief Nsam stated it as fact, not question. Ewaine nodded, tears now flowing freely. Slowly. In his food, in his drink. Little by little until he couldn't walk, couldn't talk. I watched him grow weaker every day, and I told myself it was necessary. That I was freeing myself. A man in the crowd shouted, and yet you sat beside him. You wiped his face. You pretended to care. I was scared, Ewaine sobbed. I didn't want to lose everything. The house, the money, the status. So I hid the truth. I thought if I buried him quietly, I could control the story. I could tell people he died of natural illness, and no one would question it. And Kona, another elder, asked. The loyal servant who disappeared. Ewaine's face went pale. Tambo arranged it. She knew too much. She was going to tell Nemba everything. I didn't know what they would do to her. I swear I didn't know. But you knew enough to let it happen, Chief Nsam said, his voice heavy with disappointment. And Bola. The cousin who came to help. He saw things. He heard the drums. He was asking too many questions. Tambo said we had to scare him away. I don't know where Bola is now. I don't know if he's alive or... She couldn't finish. The weight of what she had done, or allowed to be done, was crushing her. Suddenly, the fire in the center flared higher without anyone adding wood. A hush fell over the gathering. The flames danced and twisted, forming shapes that seemed almost human. The elders exchanged knowing looks. He is here, one of the traditional priests said quietly. Ndemba's spirit is not resting. He is here among us. Ewaine screamed. In the dancing shadows behind the fire, she saw it, or thought she saw it. A tall figure, familiar and strong. Ndemba's form, watching her from beyond death. No, she cried out. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just lonely. I was just weak. She collapsed forward, sobbing into her hands, her body shaking with the force of her grief and guilt. Whether it was genuine remorse or just fear of consequences, no one could say for certain. The elders conferred quietly among themselves. Then Chief Nsam spoke. The traditional council has heard your confession. You have admitted to poisoning your husband, to burying him without honor, to allowing others to be harmed or silenced. These are grave crimes against our traditions, against human decency, against the ancestors themselves. He paused, looking at the broken woman before him. We will not kill you, that is not our way. We will not jail you, that is for the courts to decide if they wish. But we give you a punishment that fits your crime. You wanted freedom. We give you freedom, but not the kind you imagined. The judgment was pronounced. Ewaine would be banished. Stripped of all wealth, all property, all status. Everything she had married Nemba to gain would be returned to his family. She would walk barefoot from Yaoundé to the village border, a journey of shame where everyone would know what she had done. And, Chief Nsam added, You are forbidden from ever returning to this land or claiming any connection to the name of Nember. You wanted to erase him. Instead, you have erased yourself. Meanwhile, a search was organized for Tambo. When they reached his shrine deep in the forest, it was empty. His belongings scattered, his sacred objects abandoned. A hunter claimed to have seen a man running through the bush at dawn, barefoot and wide-eyed, screaming, "He's following me. The dead is following me." No one ever saw Tambo again. Some said he died in the forest, driven mad by guilt and haunted by Ndemba's vengeful spirit. Others claimed he fled to another country, forever looking over his shoulder. But the elders believed the truth: the ancestors had claimed him, just as they would eventually claim all who violated their laws. As for Nember, his body was prepared properly this time. Traditional rites were performed. His spirit was addressed with respect and apology. And then, in a grand procession with drums and fires and mourning that shook the hills, the Lion of Yaoundé was finally taken home to rest among his fathers. Ewaine walked barefoot down the dusty road from Yaoundé, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back, simple clothes now, not the designer fabrics she once wore. People lined the streets to watch her pass. Some spat at the ground near her feet. Others simply turned their backs, a gesture that in African tradition means, "You are dead to us." Children, not understanding the full story but sensing the adults' disgust, threw sand in her direction. Old women who had once envied her beauty now looked at her with pity mixed with satisfaction. This was what happened when you betrayed sacred trust. This was what happened when you killed for greed and buried truth in darkness. "There goes the wife who buried a king like a thief," people whispered, and the whisper followed her like a shadow she could never escape. She found temporary shelter in an abandoned house at the edge of a nameless village. It was a structure of crumbling walls and leaking roof, where rats nested in the corners and lizards watched from cracks in the ceiling. But at least it was shelter. At least she was alive, though sometimes she wondered if death might have been kinder. The first night in that place, Ndemba came to her in dreams. He sat in his chair exactly as he used to, but his eyes were different, open wide, unblinking, seeing everything. His skin had the pale quality of the long dead, and his voice, when he spoke, seemed to come from far away and very close at the same time. "You buried me like I was nothing," he said. "Now feel what it means to be forgotten, to be erased, to be nothing." She woke screaming, running barefoot into the night, shouting, "Ndemba, forgive me. I didn't understand. I was wrong." The few people in that village thought she had gone mad. Perhaps she had. The woman who had once been called the Pearl of Yaoundé, whose beauty men praised and women envied, now looked like a ghost herself. Her hair fell out in clumps. Her skin lost its glow. Her eyes sank deep into her skull. When she looked in broken pieces of mirror, she sometimes saw Nember's face staring back at her instead of her own. Desperate for relief from the haunting, she traveled to a mountain shrine where an old priestess named Mama Luma lived. Ewaine climbed for hours, her feet bleeding, until she reached the cave entrance where the priestess sat surrounded by smoke and sacred objects. "Mama," Ewaine begged, kneeling before her, "I need help. I see him in my dreams. I hear him calling. I cannot eat. I cannot sleep. Please, make it stop." Mama Luma studied her for a long time with eyes that had witnessed decades of human foolishness and tragedy. "The man you killed gave you shelter, love, name, and home. You threw it all into the ground. Now the ground is calling it back. The debt must be paid. What must I do?" Ewaine's voice was desperate. "You must confess to the spirit yourself, not just to people. You must kneel where you buried him and speak from your deepest truth. Only then might the ancestors consider mercy." That evening, Ewaine returned to the mansion. The gates were locked, the property now under the control of Ndemba's family. But she crawled under the fence like a thief, fitting, since she had stolen years from a man's life. She crawled to the mango tree, now beginning to grow leaves again, as if Ndemba's proper burial had allowed even the tree to heal. She knelt on the soil where she had buried him in secret and pressed her hands into the earth. "Ndemba," she whispered, and her voice was raw with genuine remorse, "I was foolish. I let bitterness control me. I allowed a stranger to break our home. I was not strong. I was not loyal. I was not a wife. I was just a selfish girl who wanted everything without earning anything. Forgive me. Please. The wind picked up suddenly. Mango leaves began falling like gentle rain. And then, in the rustling of those leaves, she heard a voice, or perhaps just felt it in her spirit, the ancestors hear you. But they do not forget. That night, far away in her home village, a strange fire broke out in her family's compound. But the fire burned only her childhood room, nothing else. Not her parents' room, not her siblings' rooms, just hers. The elders in that village said, "This is not normal fire. This is a warning from the spirits." Her family, ashamed and afraid, disowned her publicly. Her name was removed from family records. Her siblings refused to speak of her. She had brought such shame to her bloodline that they performed a ceremony to cut her off spiritually, making her, in traditional terms, as though she had never been born to them. Ewaine grew thinner and more transparent with each passing day. She no longer begged for food or water. She simply sat in silence, waiting. Whether she was waiting for death or forgiveness, even she didn't know anymore. One evening, she lay beneath a tree, perhaps the same species as the mango tree that had witnessed her crime, and closed her eyes. In her dream, she saw a river. On the far shore stood Ndemba, dressed in white, his face peaceful now, no longer twisted with the pain of betrayal. "It's time," he said gently. "Let me come with you," she pleaded, reaching out her hand. But he shook his head sadly. "Not yet. Your journey is different from mine. You must carry what you've done until the ancestors decide you've learned." She woke with tears streaming down her face and whispered to the indifferent sky, "Let the ancestors judge me, not the world. I am ready." They found her body 3 days later under that tree, face peaceful finally, hands folded, eyes closed. There were no wounds, no signs of violence or sickness. Only a single white feather resting on her chest. Some said she died of shame, the weight of her guilt finally crushing her spirit. Others believed Nember's spirit had come to claim her, taking her to whatever judgment awaited in the realm of ancestors. But the elders said something simpler and more profound: the land had to speak. The truth had to rise. And justice, though it moves slowly, always arrives. Today, in the village square, a statue of Chief Nember stands tall, not as a victim, but as a reminder. Children are taught his story in schools. Young men learn that power without honor is nothing. Young women learn that beauty without character is empty. And everyone is reminded, even in silence, even buried in secret, the truth will speak. The mansion in Yaoundé has been converted into a community center bearing Ndemba's name, helping young entrepreneurs build businesses honestly. His wealth, returned to his family, funds scholarships for village children. His memory, once nearly erased, now lives stronger than when he walked the earth, and on certain nights, when the wind blows through the mango trees, old people swear they can hear drums, not sad drums of mourning, but proud drums of honor. The Lion of Yaoundé has found his rest. The wife who tried to bury him in secret learned what the ancestors have always known: you can bury a body, but you cannot bury truth. You can silence a voice, but you cannot silence justice. The earth remembers everything. And when it speaks, even the powerful must listen. This story, passed down through generations, carries wisdom that transcends time. Trust is sacred. When you marry someone, you don't just join your life to theirs, you join your spirit, your honor, your future. Betray that trust, and you betray not just a person but the ancestors who blessed your union. Greed destroys. Ewaine had everything many dream of: security, status, wealth. But she wanted more, wanted it faster, wanted it without patience. Her greed transformed her from a wife into a murderer. The truth always rises. You can hide actions, burn evidence, silence witnesses. But truth has its own life. It speaks through dreams, through notes hidden in vases, through loyal servants who risk everything, through the very earth itself. Honor matters more than wealth. Ndemba's legacy isn't his hotels or his money, it's how he's remembered. He treated people fairly. He built honestly. He earned respect. That's why the village fought so hard to give him proper rest. Justice may be slow, but it is inevitable. The ancestors watch. They wait. They see everything. And when the time is right, they act. Not always in ways we expect, but always in ways that restore balance. So when you hear an elder whisper, "Have you heard of the wife who buried her husband in secret?" know that it's not just a story. It's a warning, a lesson, and a truth that rose from the grave, a truth that will never be buried again. Fire, don't miss the next story. Fire. If this tale gripped your soul, imagine what's coming next. Every week, we uncover powerful African folktales that will move you to tears, teach you life-changing lessons, and keep you on the edge of your seat. Stories of love, betrayal, justice, and ancestral wisdom await you. Backhand index pointing right, hit that subscribe button now. Bell turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Your next unforgettable journey starts the moment you subscribe. The ancestors have more secrets to reveal, and you don't want to be left behind. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Globe showing Europe, Africa. The truth is waiting.